Hello Naka Fiji and welcome to For the Record. We've just come out of Salt Awareness Week, quite literally a week dedicated to talking about the risks and dangers of excessive salt intake. Now you would think this is quite mundane, it's salt after all, but as we'll find out tonight, there are a lot of health risks involved with excessive use of salt in our diet. And to speak with us tonight, we have in studio with us Mrs. Elvina Deo, a senior nutritionist, and Choalesi Tauke, the Food and Nutrition Project Officer. They are based with the National Food and Nutrition Center under the Ministry of Health. Ladies, thank you very much for being on the show. Salt is part of our everyday diet, whether it be food, snacks, whatever we talk about, we're quite used to salt, and really people would be thinking, it's just salt. What's the danger there? What are we talking about? So now I find out that it's linked to a lot of lifestyle diseases. Choalesi, I'll begin with you. Just why the need for Salt Awareness Week?
Okay, it's very important that we have this awareness. It's something that Fiji has taken on board as part of the global action in reducing or helping for the prevention of non-communicable diseases. And so it's so important that we have this awareness. And for us in Fiji, we actually doing this to build up the awareness. As you had just mentioned, Edwin, that this is something that's very common. We always see it at home. You go into the supermarkets, even the children, they would actually differentiate to you what is salt, how it looks like. So it's very important that we also build up on the awareness, because this is one of the household items that's always in our kitchen. So it's very important that we also inform the consumers that too much or excessive salt is very dangerous, so it's not good for our health.
Elvina, let's bring you into the conversation. How is salt dangerous to our health?
For salt, as we know, it's required by the body in a small amount, but as we all know that a little bit more is dangerous. And because salt is not seen or we can test, it only happens, or we only find out that there is a problem because of our salt intake when we get our medical checks, or we go through a screening program with the nurses and find out that there's they inform us that you have a high blood pressure. And that's just the beginning, because from there onwards, if you don't control what you're eating, your lifestyle habits are very risky in terms of there's no physical activity, there's a lot of salt consumption, there's a lot more risk to the heart and to the kidneys. So it affects the whole body, in fact. And just to break down, like for high blood pressure, in medical terms we call it hypertension. That means the pressure in the blood vessels is very high. And that creates a problem, because at that stage our heart starts pumping a lot harder and does much more work in terms of trying to distribute blood throughout the body. So imagine if we're trying to pump something through a blocked drain. It's a similar concept of when our body is trying to do that. And that creates an increase in the blood pressure, and which creates much more risk to our organs in the body.
So we know, almost everybody knows sugar is dangerous because it causes diabetes, but very few people, if anyone, knows that salt carries the same or similar dangers.
Okay. Yes, that's very true. We also have had, globally and in Fiji, we've had surveys and researches are being done, and it's evident that there has been a shift from our local fruits being consumed to having commercially or processed food as something that's been highly taken in our households now. So that is also a contributing factor to excessive salt intake. Just from that, that's why we've also encouraged this awareness that salt is also dangerous. As you had mentioned, most probably a few years back, we used to talk a lot about salt and diabetes. How would we, how we relate the two? But right now, just for our information, that hypertension, as Alvina had mentioned, high blood pressure, that's the #1 killer for non-communicable diseases right now, and diabetes is second to it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, all this while we've been talking about non-communicable diseases, it's a whole range of illnesses we're talking about, diabetes being one of them, hypertension the other. So in that section of NCDs or lifestyle diseases, what portion is caused by salt, or how much responsibility does salt intake have in that portion? When we talk about the total number of, say, NCD cases, say 90% due to excessive salt intake?
Definitely, because both the two key nutrients or ingredients that work towards NCDs are sugar and salt. And salt plays a key role, because in terms of hypertension or high blood pressure, it's not a disease but a condition which leads to other problems. So in terms, when we're talking about NCDs, the end stage, which is say a kidney failure or diabetes or even cancers, those things happen because of a problem with your eating habits, or you had hypertension which you haven't controlled, and then it has moved on to you dying with stroke or having amputation or things as such.
In a typical kitchen, what are some of the products, if you were to look on the shelf, that we need to be aware of which have a high salt content?
There's even, I'd like to share with us the theme for this year for the Salt Awareness Week is Look Out for Hidden Salt. And, just to answer to your question, items that we need to look out for that would contain salt, like sauces, spreads that we have, even noodles would have high salt contents in them, and they also have salt apart from just the salt itself. So there are a lot of food items that we have, even tin foodstuffs at home. They would have, actually the processed foods, they have about 75% of salt in them. One of the purposes is to actually preserve it, or for longer shelf life in our supermarkets. So you can imagine just, buying that, and then you're adding extra salt, about 10 to 15% of salt when you're cooking. And then if you're one of a family that has, table salt in, in the center of on the center of your table, and that's just additional salt. So just that altogether, it's just, it encourages, high consumption of too much salt. So, there are ways in this awareness, like we actually encourage other ways to reduce salt.
So we may not realize it, but on a daily basis, numerous times a day, we take in a lot of salt.
Yes.
All right. Well, when we come back, we have to take a break now, but when we come back, we're going to find out what alternatives there are available. Good evening, welcome back to the show. We're talking about Salt Awareness Week and reducing salt intake in our daily diet in order to reduce non-communicable diseases. A lot of salt intake on a daily basis, and we don't even realize it, but we are habitual beings. If we are used to a certain amount of salt intake, we won't be able to do without it. So what alternatives do we have if we reduce our salt intake? How do we, it's about our lifestyle choices.
In terms of how you can make change, basically salt is an acquired taste. So even from birth, like the recommendation for children when we are starting to give them food after 6 months of age is not to add salt. And this is something that mothers are frequently told in the clinics, so that when they're preparing foods for their babies, is not to add salt until at least they're 5 years of age. But right now in the local situation, what happens is moms are just tasting, and it's salt according to her taste, and this is creating a lot more damage from that very young age. So as the child grows, his taste for salt is increasing as well, and that is creating a lot more problem, because all these NCDs doesn't happen over time, such as flu. You just get a virus and you get sick. But for NCDs, they are chronic problems. That means it's been there for a very long time. And so all these dietary changes doesn't happen overnight. You need to start looking at it at a very young age. So all this advocacy that we are trying to do now is trying for the parents to be making a change so that our children are living longer. And now it's come to a stage where our older generation is burying their younger ones. Because of all these NCDs, there's a lot of dietary changes, and this is a lot of changes. And in terms of alternatives, when we advise people what to change, or you need to cut down on salt, it's not easy, because as you had mentioned earlier, that it's tasty. And there's a lot more substitutes that you could use, like our local herbs. There's dhania, there's mint, even domboi or lemongrass that we use for our tea. If you have a Thai dish, they use that in their meals. We don't use that, but it's a very good alternative to switching from high salt or adding salt into your meals, together with other things like lemon, which adds more flavor. And by cutting down salt gradually, what happens is you start to appreciate the flavors of the foods itself.
So it has to be a gradual, long-term process.
Yes.
But I mean, you mentioned that in a lot of cases, parents are having to bury their children. Is it that the situation has gotten worse as the years have progressed because of our lifestyle?
Yes, definitely, Edwin. It's evidence has shown that even we have been losing a lot of lives, and in other words, we've been having a lot of premature deaths as early as at the age of 30 to 40. And we've always understood that non-communicable disease is something that will, we've always learned, or we've always known that NCD, or non-communicable disease, is something that onsets or shows itself usually after the age of 40. But we have a lot of cases, known cases, who have come up with even high blood pressure at the early age of 30 or later stage, or later age of in the 20s, who have been diagnosed with having high blood pressure. And we've had, people we've lost, probably, I'm sure people who are listening out there, you would have lost, you can identify with what I'm saying today, is that you would have lost someone, a family member at a very early age, probably even before the mid-40s. Just a few weeks ago, I had a discussion with one of my friends, just saying that they had lost a family member even at the age of 42. Dying from high blood pressure and hypertension. So those are some of the things, premature death, that's actually taking family members away, and that's part of the build-up. That's some of the reasons why we have this awareness. And also this awareness for the Salt Week awareness, that we try and share information. The reason being is it's actually known to be one of the cost-effective measures in improving the health, not only for other countries, but for nations, and it's a global thing. So that is why we really emphasize on this, low reduction. We also, for us in Fiji, we have a high-fat, sugar, salt strategy, reduction strategy. So this is all inclusive of the awareness that we are launching, and all the activities that we're having throughout this week.
So when we talk about processed food, it's long been said that a lot of families are turning towards processed food, canned food, and what have you. It's easier. You don't have to go out to the market, or you don't have to go looking for the products. Walk into a supermarket, it's there, it's on the shelf. You buy it.
Convenient.
Yeah, it's convenient, especially for working mothers and guardians who don't have all day to maybe have their own backyard farm. How is that tying into the strategy that you spoke of?
Part of the strategy is actually, advocating. An example, like probably a working mother or a working parent, just a lifestyle, you don't have time after you finish work, just to put together, you would want to get something that's so convenient at the time, because by the time you reach home, it would be late for you to prepare something. So you would think, whatever is available, and usually processed food is there. So, we usually encourage ways in, just as Alvina had mentioned, there are other options. Say, for example, if I had to use, probably prepare food, say, for example, if I had to put noodles, in a thing, just the sachets, the flavor that's there, it's something that you could avoid and just substitute other flavoring of what Alvina had mentioned, like you probably put other, onions and garlics and ginger, to use that, to substitute that instead of using the salt, adding salt and also adding the flavor. So those are other ways that we would encourage, for those who prepare meals or even snacks for children. There are other options.
Alvina, you spoke about how this needs to be a collective family move over time. If, say, parents have grown up, or a husband and a wife have grown up with a certain lifestyle, with a certain diet, and they're used to it, and then they have a child who is then introduced into that same diet of sorts. What does it take to move them out of it?
Most of the time it's something very severe happening in the family, or a very close member dying. Then that's when they start realizing. And that is why now we advocate for the wellness, where everyone don't go into sickness. We are trying to prevent people from getting to that stage. And children play a very key role, because now at the center we are working with schools as well, trying to educate, or even mothers and consumers, in trying to read labels. As you had mentioned in the earlier question about the increase or dependency on processed foods. And one of the things is we can't get away from it. So the only other option is trying to know what's in your food and choosing the one which has a lower salt. And children also play a very important role in that, where you are teaching them from a very young age to be able to choose from one package to the other package, and just looking and comparing. So even at the table, so if the children are educated on these things, and if the dad is about to add extra salt in the meal, and the child pipes up and says, "Dad, you're not supposed to add salt, teacher said so," and that kind of brings the parents, okay, I need to do something. I mean, it's a very important, because they start looking at the child and thinking, yeah, maybe that is something that I need to do, because you've become so used to that high salt habits that you don't think that it's a problem until it becomes a problem.
Okay, and it's time for another break. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Ulunaka, welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about Salt Awareness Week, reducing salt intake in our diet in order to reduce NCDs, or non-communicable diseases. The processed food that we've been talking about, are there attempts to speak with the manufacturers while we are creating awareness, while you're telling families to change their diet? Are you also talking to the manufacturers to say, look, your food is unhealthy, it's causing hypertension, it's killing people? Either of you?
Oh, well, actually, we have, ever since we've started this awareness, or the strategy, the high-fat sugar salt strategy, we have been in consultations with the food industries and even retailers and wholesalers, just how we can encourage one another. We've actually, had discussions where we also need them. They play a very important role because they supply food basically for for our consumers or to us, and one of the things that that's very encouraging that we would like to raise, I'm sure Alvin and I would agree on that, the support they've given, even during this Salt Awareness Week, we have really just them coming in and asking for IEC materials and ways to advocate or to build up awareness within the food industries, having people to come in to talk with them on the importance of salt, and even giving their venues for us to build up awareness is something, it shows a collective, the relationship that's there in helping us and share or build up on the awareness of salt.
Are they open to the idea of maybe looking at the salt content in their products and making it healthier?
Yes, we've actually had that. That's one of the consultation issues that we discuss, is the reformulation, and some of the food industries have indicated their their support in reformulating some of their food items, just to help in the increase of NCD. So yes, there are food industries out there, and they actually have committed themselves into reformulating food items to help just to build up on this awareness of NCD.
Elvina, when we talk about awareness and getting the message out there, do you find that there is a lack of knowledge on the dangers of salt?
It's not the lack of awareness in terms
a lack of knowledge that people haven't actually over time.
Yeah, they do know that salt causes hypertension, but the thing is they don't understand how or what can they do to prevent it. So that's why we have these such as the Salt Awareness Week to educate people on trying to make a wiser or a healthier choice to happen. And it just doesn't stop during the Salt Week. It continuously during the outreach programs with the health teams, in the clinics, as well as in the hospitals as well. There's a lot more work done behind the screens than what we see in terms of in the awareness programs.
Do you have people who are actively interested who come up to the National Food and Nutrition Center to ask, or is it that you guys have a huge task in going out to the communities and getting the message across?
It's balanced in terms of people do come and call us and ask for our presentations and support in terms of they having a function or a gathering in a community, and they do ask us to come and talk to them. And for this week, our team has been going out to various places, to schools, even to supermarkets, and talking to people, just sharing information and sharing ideas and giving out some materials to them for them to be able to know.
The 70% of the population right now is in the 40s and below. That's pretty much
at a very productive age.
Very true, and we don't want to lose them at this age. True. So how does that tie into how many people there may be out there who have NCDs and don't know?
In terms of just a bit of statistics, the last or the first NCD STEP survey that we did in 2002, we had about 19% of our population surveyed with high blood pressure. But the recent one in 2011 shows a drastic increase to about 30% of people surveyed. So you can see it's there and it's increasing. It's just we need to be working much more faster and together, because it's not just us at the center or just the Ministry of Health, but we need a collaborative effort from everyone in trying to reduce NCDs, because it's becoming a bigger problem. And at this rate, I mean, we've already got statistics to say 80% of our deaths is NCDs. So we would be getting a bigger problem in the future if we don't do anything about it now.
Okay, 30% of people found to be living with NCDs. We'll talk more about that when we come back after the break. Good evening, welcome back to the show. We're talking about reducing salt intake to reduce non-communicable diseases. Alvina, you mentioned that the last survey showed that 30% of people surveyed had NCDs, more than double from the figure less than 10 years earlier. So, I mean, if we're talking about 3, 4, 5 years ago, would we have had enough time to make a change as we have discussions tonight? Because bearing in mind that over a 9-year period, the figures doubled. More people became sickly. They started suffering from NCDs. From that survey, from the last survey, it's only been about 5 years. Mm-hmm. Have we had enough time to make a change?
It's the tip of the iceberg. Hopefully we have, but we can only find out once surveys of this such are conducted to be able to know where we stand. But then it won't be surprising to see that further damage has been done, because people, it's all these things are behavior, and for people to change or things to change, for numbers to change, it's the person themselves need to change.
Well, that's exactly the point that we need to drive home tonight, to see the fact that people need to actively decide to make a change. Yes. There may be people who will see the show and they'll just turn a blind eye. It's not going to happen to me.
Yeah, I think so. That's why we've got that one of our taglines in, reducing your salt is, you need to make a change and reducing your salt. And no salt is as good as, there is no good healthy salt. We just need to be aware that too much salt is not good for our health. And just additional to what Alvina had mentioned, she had said, some of the ways to reduce salt, just something we would like to encourage to consumers. When you walk into the shop, have a habit of taking up the food items and reading the labels, looking out for the word sodium. That is usually, salt is in sodium and salt. People usually think that, for them just to understand that, with the content of salt that's in the particular food item that they pick up. And, you have a variety of food items there. Say, for example, if I had to go and pick up a packet of peas, or, look out and pick out which one has the lower salt or sodium level that's in on the food item. So it's very important. Even with our younger generations, our future generation, it's very important that when you take them along, when you do shopping, and just encourage them to read, for them to understand what is in the content of what they're going to eat.
You mentioned
reading food labels.
You mentioned that there's no healthy salt, but there are families who believe that they are buying a healthier salt.
Exactly. Most of the time, every now and again, people get to ask us. I'm sure Alvina gets to, being asked that question that, what is the healthy salt? If I had to reduce my salt, is there, another option? And there is no healthy salt. What we recommend is what, the global, what is recommended by the World Health Organization, that the level teaspoon of just 5 grams of salt, that's actually a level teaspoon of salt the whole day or per day, is a recommended level. So that's something we recommend for adults, and for children it's half a teaspoon, a level teaspoon of salt throughout the day.
How much would a person in Fiji on average be taking?
9 grams.
9 grams.
It's almost double the
Yeah,
recommended amount.
yeah.
That was that the 9
servings.
grams was in 2004 study, so it's definitely gone up. And in terms of when we're talking about salt, it's the sodium, which is the dangerous bit in the salt that we're eating, and it appears in a lot more forms, like MSG, which is monosodium glutamate. It's a common thing in households where mums are using it to keep the nice green color in vegetables or peas that they're frying.
Or they call it vetseed.
Vetseed or Chinese salt. And these things are baking soda. All of them have sodium in it. But when we talk about salt, people just think of your normal table salt. But these are the other things that we need to look at. So that's where the education and the awareness is coming from.
What about fast food? I mean, you know, it's the weekend, you take the kids out and you walk into a restaurant or you go to a fast food outlet. It's quite common, and there are more fast food outlets now as compared to maybe 10 years ago.
But fast foods can be used as a treat or once in a while.
Well, but I mean, they're not a treat.
Yes.
It might be happening maybe 2-3 days in a week.
Yeah, well, that's a good issue that you brought up. It's very interesting because every now and again you take your families to, you know, fast food outlets and restaurants. We've actually had consultations too with restaurants within, you know, the central divisions, and you'll notice now that even if when you go into restaurants, you will never see, you hardly get to see table salt on the tables unless you get to ask for it, and they provide it. And that's something also part of the awareness we did this last year is don't be afraid to ask for less salt. So in other words, you know, encourage also the younger ones, or, you know, you have every right when you go into food outlets to ask, you know, the option of you know, requesting them, you know, not to add salt when they prepare your meals. And you'll notice that if you go into fast food outlet now, you know, nowadays within the silver corridor, you hardly get to see salt or even soy sauces on the table. That's something that the Ministry of Health is, you know, trying to improve, just as a part of the awareness of this.
Is there a national standard that the Ministry or the Food and Nutrition Center would like to introduce in terms of restaurants and fast food outlets?
Well,
is it possible?
It's not something that's new. The restaurant, as part of their restaurant grading that has been developed with the Food Safety Act, they actually have a part of the criteria for the grading of these fast food outlets and restaurants is to avoid table salt on the table in the customers. So it's already there. The act is there. So that's one of the things that you know, for all these restaurants and fast food outlets, that's one of the basic reasons also that they don't put that, because it's in the Food Safety Act.
Okay, ladies, with that we've come to the end of the segment. We're going to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Good evening. Welcome back to For the Record. We're talking about Salt Awareness Week. I'm interested to get an idea of whether this is a losing battle at this stage because of the extent of the problem.
I hope not. That it's we're trying to win the battle against NCDs, and if we work together, as mentioned, that it's the mums and the ladies who are cooking at home, they could help us win this battle, because all the key is in their hands. When they're cooking, that is when what happens. Because if you're gradually reducing the salt, nobody would notice. If you immediately stop, then definitely there's something that people would pick up at home. But if you're gradually reducing, that is something that you can help your family and your children. And also the moms and dads who are shopping, while you're shopping, it's just make it a habit. You don't have to do it in every shopping. Just take out time, one of the weeks that you are free, just have a look at all the labels or the common foods that you're buying, and then know which one or which brand that you're buying, has a lower sodium level. So those things can make a lot of change. Just a decrease in about like few grams in salt helps reduce the blood pressure. And it's not just salt, it's the healthy habits as well, like drinking a lot of water throughout the day and then taking a lot of fruits and vegetables. These also help cut down or bring your blood pressure down. So those play an important role. It's not just the medication that you are given at the hospital. That's just to control, but it doesn't go away if you continue those unhealthy habits.
Jolisi, the fight against NCDs has been going on for a number of years. There's been so much awareness done about it, and it's gone right up to ministerial level. People are being told about lifestyle diseases and the fact that it's all about the choices they make. But how hard a fight are we looking at?
Okay, realistically, Edwin, it is quite a challenge. We hope, as you know, I would agree with what Alvina said. It's not. We hope it's not a losing battle. I mean, that's why we bring in. You know, we develop strategies and awareness as such to help. You know, help us. You know, face up to these battles, and you know, as it's mentioned, right to, if there's something we would like to encourage, right to household, at a household level, you know, it's so important that, you know, just if you value life, you know, those are the little things that add up, and gradually, it's not something that you just change overnight. You know, we're not actually advocating here that you just stop all of a sudden overnight. It's something that you gradually will slowly, you know, try and improve on. So if, you know, from probably 5 fingers of taking salt and putting it in the pot, it's actually, we would encourage you to go from 3, then 2, then just, you know, right now we're recommending, you know, just a pinch with your 2 fingers is just all you need in, you know, additional when you have to cook. So those are some of the gradual actions that we encourage, and reading labels and substituting salt and removing salt from the table. Just some of the things, you know, some of the message that we would like, you know, that's very practical to us. And, you know, that actually towards the end, it, you know, it makes a big impact. And as I've said, you know, it's one of the cost-effective measures in improving the health of the nation of Fiji. So hopefully that, you know, just this being here and just sharing this information is something that everyone out there will take a heed to, you know, following and making it a habit to our future generation, that it's very important that we reduce our salt.
All right. Ladies, thank you very much for being on the show. That's our show for tonight.
Thank
and best
you.
of luck with your efforts.
Yes.
And that was For the Record for this evening. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, you can email us fortherecord@fpc.com.fj. I'll be back again next Sunday, but up next is the My Say segment. I'll see you next weekend. Good night.